was very fortunate to be chosen to fly an airplane to the Smithsonian Museum. Since the airplane was being retired in 1990, museums all over the country wanted one, including the Smithsonian. And so the decision was made to send Blackbird tail number 972, which was our test airplane at Palmdale. I had been in the airplane by about 6 years by this time. And the last 2 years I was as a test pilot down at Palmdale, flying the Blackbird. So JT Vita was the test RSO that was assigned to fly that with me. And I had flown a lot of test missions with JT, and anyway, we felt it both extremely fortunate to fly that flight to the Smithsonian. And JT, by the way, he had more time in the Blackbird than any other crew member in history, pilot or navigator. He wound up with 1,392 hours in the airplane. And I'll just mention after our speed record flight, he got cancer and passed away two years after our flight. And I just want to say,
no, that's unfortunate.
What a pleasure it was to fly with JT, just a wonderful friend and outstanding RSO, Reconnaissance Systems Officer. So the two of us felt so fortunate to be selected because we knew that any of the crews had the skill to fly that flight. But we were just really, and so we wanted to do our very best to represent all the Blackbird community in that speed record flight across the country to the Smithsonian. And the reason it was a speed record flight is the Smithsonian wrote a letter to the Secretary of the Air Force, Donald Rice, and said, when your pilot brings the airplane to the Smithsonian, please have them set an official coast-to-coast airplane speed record, and that would call the public's attention to what a great airplane it has been for our country for 25 years. So that was the purpose of the speed record, call the public's attention to it. So our plan was to take off from Palmdale. We would fly 200 miles out over the Pacific and air refuel, get a full load of fuel, light the afterburners, and get a 200-mile running start. The NAA, the National Aeronautic Association, is the agency that monitors and verifies official speed records. So they had representatives on each coast, and they also wanted 3 city-to-city records along the way. And you would think a city-to-city record would be from takeoff to landing, but that's not how they do the city-to-city records. You pass by a city at speed, get the time, and then as you pass the destination at speed, they get the time. So that's how we were able to do 3 city-to-city records as we did the coast-to-coast record. So fuel was going to be really tight to fly all the way across the country at top speed. Ordinarily, we weren't allowed to fly faster than 3.2, but my commander gave us permission to fly Mach 3.3 for our cruise. We didn't have the fuel to cross the West Coast at Mach 3.3 and the East Coast at 3.3, turn around and land at Dulles. So we had to plan it so that we were accelerating past the West Coast through Mach 2.5, and then a few minutes later we would be at our top speed, Mach 3.3. So we took off for Palmdale at 4:30 in the morning Pacific time, which is 4:30 in the morning Washington time. We joined with those tankers out over the Pacific. It was pitch dark, no moon, no horizon, but we had refueled at night many times. We got our fuel and lit the burners, accelerated toward the West Coast, crossed it Mach 2.5 as planned, climbing and accelerating. But we're flying toward the sun, so the sun's coming up really rapidly. So we could see the sunrise as we're crossing the West Coast. Then a few minutes later, we could see the sun is up, and we could see the entire city of Las Vegas down there and Lake Mead. A few minutes later, see the Grand Canyon. And it was a special flight, so I was having some special thoughts and remembering one of my favorite hymns, America the Beautiful. We're cruising right over the heart of America at Mach 3.3. We passed by those majestic mountains of southwest Colorado, as sung about in that song, America the Beautiful. We passed about 60 miles south of Pikes Peak. For the top of Pikes Peak is where Catherine Bates was inspired to write that wonderful song, America the Beautiful. A few minutes later, we're going right over that fruited plain that she sang about in her song. Hundreds of miles of prime American farmland. I thought about all those thousands of farmers down there starting their day, getting ready to raise food that feeds most of our country and even enough to export overseas. I thought about our brave pioneers that I read about as a boy and explorers taking months to cross country that JT and I were covering in just a matter of minutes. Thought about what a great, great country we have, made great by the hard work and sacrifices and courage and prayers of our forefathers. The eastern part of the country was undercast, so we didn't see many features in the eastern part of the country. But JT and I just made sure we enjoyed those last few minutes of a view of God's earth from 80,000 feet. We wound up at 83,000 feet on that flight. And just thinking how very, very fortunate we were to serve alongside hundreds of other highly dedicated men and women who designed and maintained, supported, and flew the Blackbird through 25 years of service, and just made sure we enjoyed our last few minutes of flying that marvelous, marvelous airplane.
What a great story.
That's a lovely story. I do have a practical question I've been wanting to ask, though, because we're not supposed to have sonic booms over land, but yet you were flying supersonic over land. So did you get special dispensation, or what happened with the sonic boom you were creating the whole way across the country as you were flying so fast?
All those farmers you were talking about, not happy.
What was that? What was that? How'd you get? I mean, what happened with that? Did you get stories from people? Surprise people?
Yeah. Well, I was worried about adverse publicity, and I was afraid that there would be people making false claims against the government as a chance to get cracked windows and cracked walls repaired. But public affairs at the Pentagon told me later that there were no claims, and as soon as people found out that it was the Blackbird on its historic mission that they heard, they were just happy to have heard something historic. But the Blackbird flew regularly during our training missions, supersonic over the western United States. And so we were allowed to be supersonic as long as we were above 30,000 feet. So when we were transitioning from subsonic to supersonic, we would have to be above 30,000 feet as we went supersonic. We did try to, on those training missions, we would avoid major cities. Once we got to altitude, though, the sonic booms were noticeable, but not dramatic, not nearly enough to break anything.
I guess when you're that high, it doesn't matter as much as if you're down low doing it.